you've been drinking that day, right?
Yeah, I had a,
And
like,
showing what's been
beers.
marked as Exhibit 12A. You recognize that?
yes.
That's the group photo of you folks from the beginning of the river.
Yep,
In fact, you're holding a beer.
correct.
Looks like everybody in your group has some sort of alcoholic beverage.
Looks like it.
You see numerous people in your group with these phone cases around their necks.
Yeah,
And as you're going down the river, you saw lots of people with phone cases around their necks, right? Mm-hmm. All day long?
yeah.
In fact, River's Edge sells or rents out those phone cases, right?
I don't know that.
Did people in your group rent or buy phone cases from the tube rental?
I have no
stand?
idea.
Right? You've testified that you were told to bring the knife before you left your home, right?
Correct.
And the reason for bringing your knife on the river was to cut strings or ropes for the tubes, right?
Correct.
And that was the reason you brought it.
Correct.
In fact, you told the police that after your tubes were tied together, you thought you put your knife back in the car, right?
Correct.
But in fact, it was in your pocket.
Yes.
Was it in your pocket the whole day?
No.
All right, well, we're going to get to that. Once the tubes are tied together with the rope, and you said that you thought that you put it back in your car, you don't have a reason to have the knife anymore, right? It accomplished its purpose, right?
I didn't know that at the time.
All right. Did you tell the cops, the police, that you didn't think you were going to need it, and that's why you thought you put it in the car?
I may have.
All right. Were you present when Steve Kaufman, who owns River's Edge, testified first day of the trial?
Yes.
And you heard him say that they sell pre-cut cords for $1, right?
Right.
All right. And then, did you see in the picture, when you got on the river, you were wearing that long-sleeve camel shirt, right? Mm-hmm. And a hat and sunglasses?
Correct.
All right. Ariel's phone was in one of those cases, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I can see it.
All right. And is it your understanding that those cases are float cases?
That's what I was told.
All right. And in fact, you told Lieutenant Hart that it was in a float case, right?
Correct.
Once the phone disappeared, there was conversation amongst the folks in your group about whether it was even worth it to go look for it, right?
That's what I learned.
And in fact, you were told that they didn't care about the lost phone because they had insurance to cover it, right?
That's what I learned here, but I don't remember that as a conversation.
Nobody asked you to go look for the phone, right?
Correct.
You chose to do that on your own.
I volunteered.
And in fact, members of your group were a little annoyed that you were stopping again so quickly after having been at the hideaway where you had stopped for lunch.
Objection, speculation.
Sustained.
Did you hear anybody in your group say, why are we stopping again?
I didn't stop the group.
The group stopped when you decided to go off on your own to look for this phone, right?
Objection, speculation.
Overruled.
Right?
They already stopped. I got off the tube to look for so I didn't stop them.
In any event, you're the one who insisted on looking for it. Nobody asked you to do that, right?
Objection, asked and answered.
Sustained.
And when you left to go look for the phone, you had your goggles and your snorkel, right? You knew that the phone was in a float bag, at least that's what you told police afterwards, right? Mm-hmm. Is that a yes?
Yes.
So the phone and the float bag would have been floating, right?
Supposedly,
All right, and so you wouldn't need a snorkel and goggles to find a phone floating on top of the water, right?
I wasn't sure if it was actually floating or not, and never tested it.
All right, well, you would agree that a phone has some weight to it,
Yes.
and if it wasn't a float bag, it would sink to the bottom, right?
Yes,
where it was dropped.
correct. Well, or, remember, it's a river, so
Sure.
it could have flown down.
The river has current, right?
Right. So it could
How am I
have
going to
been.
approach? I'm going to draw something here.
Yes.
Now, you remember when you met with Lieutenant Hart, you drew a diagram of the river. All right, and this is your group up here at the sandbar, right? This is the boys' group down here. And I'll put initials IS for Isaac Schumann, right?
Correct.
This is this is the diagram that you wrote, drew for Lieutenant Hart. The phone was lost over here, right? Instead of looking downstream for it, where the current was going, you went this way, across the current,
No,
to look for the phone. You made contact with Isaac Schumann's group on the other side of the river.
but that's not where I started looking for it, straight across the river.
That's where you ended up making contact with
I
him.
ended up there, but I didn't start there.
All right, the phone would not have floated across the current, right?
Well, I don't know where he lost it. That's where we pulled over. He could have lost it minutes before we even anchored.
So when you testified a minute ago that the phone was lost, where your group was labeled M, now you're changing that story?
In that vicinity,
Objection. Mischaracterized his testimony.
Again, members of the jury, what the attorneys say is not evidence. Rely on the witness's testimony. Next question, please.
In any event, it's your testimony that you had reason to go over to the south side of the river where Isaac Schumann's group was, to look for a phone. That's your story?
I had reason to search in that area. I didn't know where that phone fell in the water. I don't think even Ariel knew where he lost it. We didn't drop the phone when we anchored. He dropped the phone before we got there.
Fair to say that at that point in the river is 150 feet wide,
Yep,
and Isaac Schumann's group was on the south side of the river.
correct.
Your group's on the north side of the river.
100 feet.
Rather than searching the north side, you went to the south side of the river. Is that fair to say?
I already looked in that area.
That's not what I'm asking. You went over to the south side of the river, right?
Objection asked and answered.
Overruled. You can answer the question.
You did, right?
What was that question again?
You went over to the south side of the river to supposedly look for this phone, right?
I ended up there at that point, yes.
And you chose to go over there and look for it, where these boys were.
Asked and answered.
Overruled. You can answer the question.
Oh,
You chose to go over to where these boys were to supposedly look for this phone, right?
chose to look in that area, yes.
There was other areas of the river where these boys weren't located that you could have searched until they floated past. Right?
A million other spots.
Sure. But you chose to go to that spot.
I didn't even notice those boys there at the time when I was searching.
You were present in court when Eric Williams, who was a member of your group, testified, right?
Right?
You heard him testify?
Yes.
And you were here when he testified that he had some concerns about you going over to snorkel by this group, Isaac's group?
I heard him.
And one of his concerns is that he thought that they would think you were a predator, right?
Objection irrelevant.
Sustained.
He testified that you didn't have your knife in your pocket the whole time, right?
Correct.
When you decided to go snorkel over by Isaac Schumann's group, you had the knife in your pocket.
Yes.
Did you go back to your group and get it?
No, I had the knife. I testified I did not have the knife in my pocket the whole time. When we pulled over there, I fixed my shoes. Then I left it in my pocket.
All right, but somehow, so when you get ready to snorkel,
Yes.
you've taken off your shirt, right?
Yes.
Your hat,
Yes.
your sunglasses,
Correct.
you left the knife in your pocket.
I forgot it in my pocket.
Well, on the video, we can see you touching your knife, right? You knew it was in your pocket.
Well, when you walk, it starts, yeah, but
It has weight,
Right,
right?
yeah.
So you can't forget it's there because it's got weight. Correct?
at some point, I forgot I had it in my pocket when, yeah.
You
when
weren't
you
gonna,
walk.
you were not going to need your knife to snorkel and look for a lost phone.
Correct.
Asked and answered.
Overruled.
You weren't going to need your knife for that task that you set out to do, right?
I wouldn't even need anything.
But you brought it with you anyhow.
It happened to be in my pocket, yes.
When she got over to where Isaac Schumann's group was, they made it readily apparent they did not want you over by them, correct?
That's not true.
They didn't call you names?
Yes, but they asked me what I was looking for. And I thought they were polite people. I said, I'm looking for my lost phone.
They did not want you by them, and they told you that, right?
At some point, yes.
And that's the short video. You turn around and you're walking away, right?
Yes.
But then Joanne Cockfield calls you a raper, right?
Yes.
And then you turn around
Yes.
and you were angry.
I was not angry.
Oh, you were not angry that someone called you a raper,
No.
all right? You look at Joanne, who's filming you, right?
Yeah.
And for some reason, your testimony is that even though many people on the river have these phones and these float cases, you decided that was the phone and you needed to run up and check.
Objection argumentative.
Sustained.
Your testimony earlier was you thought he had the phone, right?
I thought he had the phone, yes.
Right.
I wanted to investigate.
And you, instead of walking up and saying, hey, is that the phone I'm looking for, you ran up on these boys, didn't you?
I ran up and stumbled, and then I fell right by their, yes,
That's my next question. You're claiming now that you stumbled.
yes.
You've never said that before today, ever, to anybody, any law enforcement or anybody else. Right?
But I have seen the videos now.
Well, we're going to take a look at the video. And since you reviewed the video, you know that before you ran up on them, you were touching your knife in your pocket to make sure it was there, right?
I don't remember that.
All right, well, let's take a look. Stop. Back up one. That's you with your right hand touching your pocket where your knife was clipped in, right?
It appears so.
What is he on? Whoa! 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 Get away!
So you're claiming today that where you reach down and grab at these boys' legs where their tubes are, that was a stumble. Is that your story?
Objection argumentative.
Overruled. You can answer the question.
I know I hit a stone, yes. But I grabbed onto their inner tubes.
And you know where you grabbed onto their inner tube is where two of these boys had their legs draped over their inner tubes, right?
I see that.
And you made contact with their legs, didn't you?
I don't remember that.
Did you see it on the video?
I see it on the video. I don't remember actually making contact.
And as soon as you did that, these boys jumped out of their tubes to get away from you, right? You remember that?
Yeah.
And you held onto their tubes so that their tubes couldn't float away.
For how long?
Well, I'm asking you. You did.
Yeah, it looks like for a brief 1 second.
And you were searching through their tubes.
Or what?
You walked around their tubes rather than letting their tubes go so they could get back in their tubes and be on their way, you walked around their tubes.
So after my goggles dropped in the water, I went around their tubes to go to the other side and look for my goggles.
Let's talk about your goggles for a second, because you told the police, and specifically Lieutenant Hart, that these boys knocked your goggles off your face and that you were looking for your goggles at that point, right?
I don't remember my interview with her, correct?
But you heard yourself say it in the interview.
Yes, yes.
And in fact, that nothing of the sort ever happened, right?
So the interview with Brandy Hart was not accurate.
What you said at the time is what you wanted the police to believe happened, right?
That's what I remembered at the
Okay.
time.
And from the video, you can see that you actually put your goggles in your mouth so you would have two free hands to be able to grab onto these boys' tubes, right?
Yes,
So you were preparing for your stumble before it actually even happened?
I wasn't prepared for anything.
These boys were calling you names to go away, right? After you grabbed onto their tubes, touched their legs.
I don't remember any of that stuff.
All right, you don't remember them calling you, asking you what you were doing?
Watching the videos, yes, but unnatural remembering, no.
Do you remember as you're running up, they're saying, whoa, 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 what's he doing?
I don't remember that,
All right, but you've seen it on the video.
yes.
And then once you've made contact with two of these boys' legs and grabbed onto their tubes, they started calling you a pedophile, right?
I don't remember when they started calling me.
Do you remember them calling you a pedophile at all? Or do you just know that from watching the video?
Correct.
You testified that they were calling you names earlier, right?
Right.
And that upset you.
It did not upset me.
Okay, your attorneys talked about your comfort scale and your fear scale. Let's talk about your anger scale, okay? At the time you were called a raper, what was your anger scale at?
Maybe 1,
1 out of 10?
yeah.
And that was enough to get you to run up on these boys, grab onto them, stop their tubes at a 1. Is that what you're saying?
Objection, argumentative, that's not what he said.
Sustained.
You don't like being humiliated, right?
Nobody does.
Your attorney has said that these boys were humiliating you.
Objection as to his making.
Sustained on the form.
You're claiming that you were being taunted.
Objection, he did not testify to that.
Sustained. Form.
You had testified earlier that your shoes, there was problems with your shoes, but as you can see from the portion of the video we played so far, those shoes didn't prevent you from running up on these boys, right?
Yes, they did. If I had better shoes, I could walk better, but I could still walk.
If you had better shoes, you would have been able to run up on them faster.
No, I mean, I could walk better. I wouldn't stumble. I wouldn't have a hard time walking.
All right, we're going to watch the video again, and I want you to, if you can, point out for everybody where you stumbled.
What is he on? Whoa! 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 Get away!
Did you watch it?
Yes,
So the stumble, is that something you remember or something that you think you see in the video?
something I remembered.
After you grabbed onto their tubes, stopped them, walked around their tubes, you took a few steps downriver and stood in the path they were floating in, right?
Objection as to form. Multiple.
Overruled. Do you understand the question, Mr. Miu?
Could you say it again?
After you left their tubes that first time, you took a few steps downstream and stood in their path where they would need to float, where they were floating, right?
For a few seconds, yes.
You didn't walk off to the south shore, which was close at that point, right?
I thought I walked far away from them, that they, I mean, I didn't even watch them anymore at that point, so I don't know where they were at that point in time. But I was still looking for my goggles now.
Are you denying that you stood right in the path of their tubes?
Objection argumentative.
Overruled. You can answer the question.
At that moment in time, yes.
Now, when you ran up on these boys and grabbed onto their tubes and made contact with their legs, you weren't saying anything at that point, right?
No.
You didn't say anything like, hey, I think that's my phone, or Ariel's phone?
I don't remember saying anything.
You've seen the video.
Right.
You just ran up and grabbed onto them, right?
It appears that.
Was saying nothing. We can go up to the screen. We're going to look at some more frames here. We're starting 22nd mark, I believe. You stood in front of their tubes, right? This is at the 23-second mark.
For a brief moment.
All right, keep going. Stop. At that point, you had the entire river open to move in any direction, right?
Right.
And you chose to just walk a few steps directly downstream from where their tubes were, right?
Correct.
The boys were yelling at you at this point, right? You remember that?
Yep.
They were making a commotion, right? They were loud. And that attracted the attention of the folks in the Carlson group, right? You've testified that Maddie Cohen walked over, right?
Yep.
You walked towards her,
Yes.
and the water level at the spot that you had contact with Maddie was about ankle deep from the video.
From the video, yes.
And you told Lieutenant Hart you were standing in really shallow water, right?
Yep.
Maddie told you to leave the area, right?
She didn't say it that way, but yes.
She said, go, go, go.
And
She swore at you too, but she was telling you to go, right?
yeah,
You didn't go.
I was trying to communicate with her what I was doing in the river.
You didn't leave, right?
No,
Objection irrelevant.
not down the river.
Hold on.
Objection irrelevant. There's no legal basis that it.
Overruled. It's relevant.
You did not leave, right?
I
At the
didn't
time
go
that
in
she
the
came up
direction. No,
When she came up and said, go, 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 you chose to stay, right?
I wanted to talk.
You didn't like that she was yelling at you, right?
I only had like 2 or 3 seconds of direct verbal or whatever.
And you clearly didn't like she was swearing at you, right?
Right.
And what you told her was not that you were looking for a phone, but that these boys took your goggles, right?
I don't remember what I told
Right.
her.
If it's on the video, did you say it?
If it's on the video, yeah,
You never mentioned you were looking for a phone.
I don't remember my conversation with
And in
her.
fact, after you told her that they took your goggles, you never said another word, right?
After that,
Right.
of course I did.
Talking about your anger scale, at the point where Maddie Cohen was yelling at you and pointing at you and swearing at you, where was your anger scale?
1,
And even with your anger scale being only 1, you started touching, fidgeting with the knife in your pocket, right?
I don't remember that.
Let's take a look at the video. We're ready. It's timestamp 135. That's you touching your knife in your pocket, right?
Correct.
And at this point, you've got your back to the two girls who were yelling at you, right?
It's possible.
So even though you were fearing for your life, you turned,
Objection. Not what he said at that time.
Overruled. Let's get the question out.
you turned your back on these folks, right?
Where am I in that location as reference to the other people?
I get to ask the questions at this point, okay?
All right.
You're back at the 135 mark that we just watched. You've turned your back on these folks, right?
Okay.
Is that true?
Yes,
You
I
saw
see
it,
that, yeah.
Right? You're touching your knife, but you got your back to them, right?
I see that in the picture.
And so at that point, you wouldn't have turned your back on these folks if you had fear of them, right?
Objection mischaracterizes his testimony.
Overruled, overruled. You can answer the question. Yes.
We can have the screen. Stop. Stopping at 135. So in that clip, that's the point where you had waved at your friends, right? You had turned your back on the groups of people that were in the area, and you're touching your knife, right? And at that point, you called out to your friends because I think you had said, and maybe I'm wrong, that your fear scale was going up at that point. Is that not right?
I see lots of people around me, and I wanted somebody to be on my side.
Right. Your fear scale was going up, so you tried to wave your buddies over, right?
Creeping up, yeah.
And as it's creeping up, you're fidgeting with your knife.
It appears that way.
At some point, and even though your fear level is creeping up at that point and you've called for help from your friends, or at least waved for help, you turned your back, right?
Yes.
At one point, you turn your head and you stare at the group of 17-year-old boys, right? Do you remember doing that?
I don't remember it, but if I could see a video.
Put it into context, it would have been at the point when Maddie Cohen tried to turn you away from those boys. Do you remember doing that?
Yes.
And 1 second, right there. If we can get the frame up. We're at timestamp 116. That's the look that you gave to those boys, right? At that time, at 116?
Yes,
That's the look on your face.
yeah,
That's an angry look.
not to me. I was annoyed, more than frustrated, but not angry.
At the point where you looked at the boys with that expression on your face, whatever it was, you had the entire river in front of you open to walk to, right? That's true.
Correct?
And instead you chose to turn back around where Maddie Cohen was, right?
I stood my ground. I basically stayed in the same location.
Right.
I didn't go towards anybody at that point.
You didn't take a step away either, did you?
No.
And at that point then, that's when Riley Madison joins her, and you've got Madison and Riley standing in front of you, right?
I suppose that's the time, yeah.
Two girls.
Yeah.
And these two girls standing in front of you touched your shoulders somewhat, right? You never said yes?
Yes.
You never stumbled backwards or anything like that?
It wasn't a somewhat. But
Well, let's take a look at the video. We're going to start a little bit earlier than the part I wanted to start at. It's at the 135 mark again, if we can put this screen up. You can take the screen down. Starting at 134. So at that point, you're touching your knife before Maddie and Riley are standing in front of you, right?
appears that way.
Stop. You had said that your fear level was rising. You had waved to your friends, right? That was the look on your face at the time, correct? You're smiling.
I'm confused.
You're smiling.
I'm confused.
You're not smiling?
That's not a smile.
Yes, let's move on, please.
Should you turn the screen off? Can we get the screen back? Stop. All right, so you had been fidgeting with your knife multiple times. You've got Riley Madison in front of you. I believe her testimony was she's a 115-pound woman. You got Maddie Cohen on your other side. This is when you choose to pull out your knife, right?
Motion has to form.
Overruled. You understand the question?
What does her way have to do with me?
Sir, you don't get to ask the
I'm
questions
sorry.
at this point. You pulled out your knife at this point with these two girls standing in front of you, right?
Yes,
And you held it down by your belt line, right?
yes,
And you open it up, right?
yes.
And this is before you had been punched or anything like that. You had that knife ready with these two girls standing in front of you.
Objection as to use of the term girls, they're women.
Women, pardon me. Right? And you didn't hold it up and say, hey, I have a knife, right?
To me, that would be a threat.
Well, I'm not asking you that. You did not hold it up.
No,
And you didn't, in fact, you held it down by your side, right?
Objection, asked and answered.
Overruled.
Isn't that what you did?
yes,
You didn't take a step back and brandish it and say, hey, back up, I have a knife, right?
correct.
You opened it down low, and then you held it down low by your side, right?
Correct.
And as you're doing that, you're smiling, right?
That's not a smile.
Well, let's take a look at the video.
I'm overwhelmed and annoyed.
And that's you holding your knife down by your belt line, right?
Yes,
When you pulled it out and opened it up, you held it with the blade facing up, right?
I didn't pay attention, but in the video, yes.
And it becomes important later when you stab AJ, because you didn't try to cut him down, you cut him up, right? Right?
That was not my intent.
Objection is the form.
Overruled. I believe the witness answered the question.
You had the knife blade up and you're saying you didn't know that?
I didn't pay attention.
As you're holding it there, you've got your thumb on the bottom of the handle, right? Right?
Yeah,
Blade up.
I see that.
Blade's pointing at, looks like at Matty Cohen, right?
Yes,
Nobody else, we'll strike that. After you opened that knife, would it be fair to say that your fear level went down a little bit because now you had your knife open?
no,
All right. Was your fear level going up at that point? I think you said that earlier.
the whole situation was boiling up.
So when you have your knife open, you take a couple step backwards to get away from the situation?
I stood my ground. I stayed in place.
You never backed up one step, did you?
No,
You had your knife out and you were prepared to use it.
to defend myself.
At that point, there's nothing to defend yourself from, right?
I didn't know that.
If I understand your testimony today, now you're acknowledging that you did do something to Matty Cohen, which started off this fight, right?
Objection, argumentative.
Overruled. You can answer the question.
Objection, police probe.
Yes. Would you please rephrase the question?
I will, Your Honor. You're testifying today that you did actually make physical contact with Matty Cohen, right? Before you were punched or anything else, right?
I may have.
You don't
I-
remember that?
Well, I remember what I said, but I went over to push. She was right in my face, right in my space, yelling. And I could smell the alcohol in her breath.
But you had been drinking too, so might have been your breath.
I didn't have vodka and all the other garbage.
My
Right.
point is, today you testified that you did something physical to Madison Cohen before you were punched, right? Correct?
I don't know if I touched her or not. It's possible that I did.
If your friend Sergio testified last week that he saw you push her and she went flying back a couple of steps, that's what happened, right?
Objection as to form.
Sustained.
Were you present when Sergio testified?
Objection as to form and relevance.
Sustained.
After you pushed Matty Cohen, only one person ever punched you, right?
From the video?
Right.
That's what I see. I don't remember what happened there at that time.
I'm not asking you what you remember. I'm asking what actually happened.
I got punched.
Objection, no foundation.
Sustained, rephrase the question,
We
starting.
saw in the video that only one person ever punched you, right?
Yes.
Objection. Me,
It's crossed, it's not
Hold on.
legal.
can I approach?
Yes.
When you fell down into the water.
Yes.
When Dante Carlson hit you, he was holding a can of beer in one hand, right?
Yes.
He was fighting you with one hand.
Yes.
You never suffered any kind of bruising or cuts to your face from this incident, right?
On the inside of my cheek?
You cut the inside of your cheek.
Yes.
You never had any bruising on your jaw, right?
I don't remember. I mean, I had a beard. I couldn't tell.
You weren't bleeding from your face anywhere.
No, not that I know.
Let's play the video of him stabbing you. Once you're knocked down in the water, AJ Madison comes up to you and pushes on your back, right?
Objection, no foundation.
Sustained.
We'll play the video. You were pushed in the back by AJ Madison, right?
Objection, no foundation.
Overruled.
In response, you got up out of the water, right? You take your knife in your right hand with the blade up, right?
Objection is in narration, correct?
Overruled.
That's what you did, right?
Still in my hand, yes, that way.
You jabbed it into his belly.
About the same time he hit me in the throat.
That's not what I'm asking.
Yes.
You jabbed it into his belly, right?
Yes.
Instead of pulling it out, you pulled up, right?
Because I had so much time to think about it.
You pulled up.
I did not pull up.
Okay,
Look at the angle of my arm.
We're stopped at timestamp 156. You see your knife,
Yes.
how close it is to his jaw, his chin?
Yes.
That's because when you stabbed him, instead of pulling out, you went up, right?
I was falling backwards with the knife in my arm, in my hand, and the angle of my arm was about the same. Just got hit in the throat.
In this frame of the video, the knife's pointing straight up, right?
Yes.
You went in, pulled up, and it's by the time you got done up by his face, your knife's pointing straight up.
Objection, asked, answered.
Overruled. You can answer the question.
It's straight up.
At that point, Tony Carlson came in to break up the fight.
Objection, speculation. He doesn't know what Tony Carlson's doing on water.
Overruled. You can ask the question, he can answer.
I don't know what he was doing.
You know that he told Dante Carlson to back up, right?
Objection, no foundation.
Overruled.
Do I know from video and from testimony? Yes. At the time, I didn't know.
After you stabbed AJ Madison, you were pushed back into the water, right?
Just sorry, it's AJ Carlson.
Pardon me. No, it's not. It's not.
AJ Martin.
It's AJ Madison. He's not part of the Carlson family. AJ Martin.
Thank you.
Pardon me. After you stabbed A.J. Martin, you were pushed back into the water, right?
Yes.
Nobody jumped on top of you.
No.
Nobody was kicking at you or punching you.
No.
You're just in the water by yourself, right?
Apparently, yes.
We're going to take a look at the video starting at 1:55. That's you in the water, still holding your knife, right? Pardon me, this is before you got up. At this point, you're standing there. There's nobody hitting you, nobody's punching you, nobody's kicking you, right?
Objection, that's not what the video shows. He's not standing.
Gentlemen, please come up.
I landed on my butt
Right.
in the river.
But at that point, the fight didn't continue. People weren't punching on you, right?
At that time, I couldn't tell what was going on
Sure.
around me.
That's at the point that Tony Carlson came over, was yelling at people to back up. Do you remember that?
From the video.
You don't have a memory of that in your head? He separated Dante from you, right?
Objection, no foundation.
Overruled.
Right?
If it's from my memory, I don't remember that.
Tony Carlson never punched you, correct?
Correct.
He never kicked you, never pushed you.
Objection, mischaracterize the evidence.
Overruled.
No.
And you turned around and you stabbed him twice, right?
I couldn't see. I couldn't hear. I didn't know who was punching me, touching me, shoving me, nothing. I was fearing for my life.
You stabbed the guy who tried to break up the fight twice, right?
Objection, form.
Overruled.
That's what happened, right?
That's what happened.
And luckily for him, he was able to block your first stab, so you stabbed him again, right?
I had milliseconds to think.
Riley Madison, after you stabbed Tony Carlson, you turned around, you got up, you turned around, and you sliced Riley Madison through her left side of her body, right?
Yes.
She wasn't punching you or kicking you.
She came at me. She had her hands on me.
At the time you stabbed her, she had her hands on you.
Yes.
This 115-pound woman attacked you while you're standing there holding a knife.
She could have been 500 pounds. I don't know. I'm sorry, sir, but
You've never told anyone ever that Riley Madison attacked you and that's why you stabbed her, right?
no.
You're saying it today for the first time.
I don't remember this whole thing.
After you stabbed Riley Madison, Isaac Schumann tries to push you, right?
And he lands his hands on my throat. Yes.
But his hands originally weren't anywhere near your throat. They were on your shoulder and your chest, right?
I didn't take measurements, but yeah, from the picture, yes.
And as soon as he touches you, you stab up into his heart with your knife, right?
Objection, no foundation.
Overruled.
He went for my throat, and I defended myself. Yes.
Are you saying, we're going to look at the video. We're going to start at 2:02, and for anybody who doesn't want to watch, you might want to avert your eyes. Ready? We're at 2:05, the timestamp on the video. That's Isaac Schumann, right? If you
Right,
know,
right.
his left hand on your arm, right?
Right,
His right hand on your chest, right?
right.
They're not on your throat.
In that particular frame,
And
correct.
your right hand is cocked, your elbow's bent, right?
Okay,
And you've got the knife in your hand.
yes.
Let's play it through, please. And as he's pushing you, you jam your knife up into his heart, through his rib cage, right?
After he touches my throat and pushes me back, yes, correct.
As your arm is moving up to stab him, you actually moved his arm closer up your, or farther up your body with your own movement, right?
I don't know how to answer that. I didn't see that.
At the time that this incident happened, you agree you weighed 248 pounds?
Yes,
Not one of these people that you stabbed so far in the video were armed in any fashion, right?
right.
You told an elaborate story about people pulling knives on you, right?
Objection, argumentative as to form.
Overruled.
Right? You made up that story?
To Brandy Hart?
Lieutenant Hart, yes.
I don't remember that, but I saw the video, yes,
At no point did anybody pull any knife on you, right?
correct,
You're the only person who had a knife.
correct.
You had said earlier that you had waved for your friends to come over because you were so scared, right? Right?
During we're moving back in time now?
Well, yeah, earlier you had waved. We saw
Yes.
the video. You said you
Yes.
had waved to your friends because
Yes.
you were scared. Your fear level was at whatever. And in fact, Ariel came over, right?
Yes,
And he's in the group at the point that Riley Madison's standing there bleeding into the river, right? He's
Yes.
standing right behind her.
yep, yep,
And at the time that you stabbed Tony Carlson, Ariel's right there, right in the group, correct?
I see that in the video, yes,
And when you stabbed Isaac Schumann, he's also standing there, right?
I didn't see him there at the time, but yes, in the video, yes,
So this narrative about it being 13-on-1, you had a friend there,
Objection,
right?
argumentative form.
Overruled.
Your friend is standing right there, he's in the video, right?
in the video. I don't remember him being there.
But you saw him coming, walking downstream.
I don't remember.
You waved for him, right?
I waved at my group.
At no point when you stabbed Tony, Riley, and Isaac, did you call out to your friend and say, hey, help me, they're attacking me, right? Even though he's in the frame and he's close to the action, so to speak. You never said that, right?
I was stunned. Couldn't talk.
The last person you stabbed was Dante Carlson, right?
Yes,
And this is in the sequence of events, everything else had happened, right?
yes.
Objection as to form, I don't know what everything else is.
Sustained.
All the other stabbings had already occurred, right? At the point that you stabbed Dante Carlson.
Yes.
He wasn't punching you at that point.
I was surrounded. People were coming at me. I just came up a couple of times being punched in the head, punched in the mouth. I fell on river rocks. I was in pain. I was hurting.
Tony Carlson had broken up the fight between you and Dante never hit you again after that, did he?
Objection, that's.
Sustained. Form. Please rephrase.
At the point that you stabbed Dante Carlson, he was not fighting with you, right?
Correct.
He had not punched you immediately before you decided to stab him.
Correct.
In fact, you took a couple steps toward him to stab him, didn't you?
I thought he was attacking me.
So at that point, you stabbed 5 people and you decided to leave the area. Is that true?
I walked away.
You walked up to Ernesto, right?
Yes.
You didn't say anything about being attacked, right?
I was in shock.
You said, they took my knife, right? To Ernesto?
I
what
don't
you said?
remember that, but that's what I said according to all the video and,
Well, if Ernesto said that, that's what you
Yes.
said.
yeah.
You still got the knife on your person, right? Even though you just told them they took your knife, you still had it. Right?
No. When I reached the tubes,
No. When Ernesto came walking up and you walked up to him, you told him they took my knife. It's the first thing out of your mouth, right?
I don't remember that.
Okay. Instead of walking to your group, you walked up to the south side, south shore of the lake, of the river, right?
Yes.
And on the way, you washed off the knife in the river.
I don't remember that.
Well, you had blood on your hand and on the knife, right?
Yes.
When you left the area, right?
Yeah.
When you got back to your group, nobody saw any blood on your hands or, right?
Objection, foundation. No way.
Sustained.
At some point, you rinsed your hand and the knife in the water, right?
I don't remember that, but yeah.
What you do remember is throwing the knife up into the bushes on the south bank.
Right on the bank, yes.
And then you finally walked over to your group, right?
As I was walking, I threw it away, yes.
No. You walked out of your way to get to the south bank to get rid of it and then walked back across the river to your group, right?
Objection, argumentative.
Overruled.
That's what you did, right?
Yes.
We're going to play the video taken by Larry and Davis, Judge. It's grainy, but it's of some value.
You have many more questions?
Yes.
Well, maybe this will be a good time to take a break. Let's recess and we'll come back at 2:50. Please take the jury out.
All rise for the